You have 1 week to go. My brother grinned across the dinner table. Mom and Dad just sat there quietly. I pulled out the property documents. Actually, you all have 24 hours. Their forks clattered down when I said hey, read it. The noise of the silverware was the loudest thing in the room, forks hitting plates, glasses on the table, the soft hum of the flickering ceiling light above us. It was meant to be a regular dinner, nothing special, just the four of us at the same table we had shared for most of our lives. The table my mother insisted on keeping even when the legs started to wobble. The one my father wouldn't replace because it was still usable. My brother sat across from me, chewing slowly and deliberately. He wasn't paying attention to his food, he was watching me. That alone made my stomach churn. He wore that relaxed, amused, slightly smug look he always had when he thought he was in control. I had seen it my entire life, usually right before something hurtful disguised as honesty. You have 1 week to leave, he said casually, as if he were commenting on the weather, smirking. Not angry, not frustrated, just satisfied. For a moment, I didn't process what he said. The words hung there, disconnected from meaning, waiting to settle. I glanced around the table, anticipating a response. My mother focused on her plate, pushing peas into neat little piles. My father lifted his glass, took a long sip of water, then set it down carefully, as if timing was more important than the words just spoken. No one said anything. That was when I realized this wasn't a joke. This wasn't spontaneous. This had been decided long before dinner was served. I'm sorry, I said softly. My brother leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. You heard me. 1 week. We need the space for what? I asked. He shrugged. Plans. Just one word. Plans. No explanation, no justification, no attempt to soften it. My mother cleared her throat. Your brother's under a lot of stress right now. My father nodded once, still not looking at me. It's for the best. For whose best? No one clarified. I felt heat rise in my neck, but my voice stayed calm. I live here, I said. My brother let out a short, sharp laugh. Not for much longer. That laugh hurt more than the words because it carried certainty. My mother finally looked at me then. Her expression wasn't angry, it was worse. Detached, practical, as if she were discussing logistics, not her daughter. You're an adult, she said. You'll figure something out. Figure something out. The phrase felt heavy, bringing with it the weight of every time I'd been expected to adjust, accommodate, or sacrifice, like I always did. I stared down at my plate, suddenly aware I hadn't eaten a single bite. I thought about how I ended up back in this house. The divorce, the temporary stay, the promises that it wouldn't last long, just until things settled, they had said. I paid utilities without being asked. Covered repairs when something broke. Took over paperwork when my parents didn't understand it or didn't want to deal with it. When the roof leaked, I called the contractor. When property taxes were overdue, I took care of it. When letters came from the city, I opened them. Quiet work. Invisible work. Apparently, none of it earned me a place at the table. My brother leaned forward, lowering his voice as if offering advice. Don't make this harder than it has to be, he said. You've always been good at adapting. Adapting? A word he used like praise. My fingers curled slightly against my thigh. I waited for my parents to say something. Anything. They didn't. I stood up slowly. Excuse me, I said. No one stopped me. I walked down the hallway past framed photos, birthdays, graduations, holidays, all smiling faces frozen in time. Images that now felt carefully edited, like a version of our family that only existed on the walls. I went into my room and closed the door, not slammed, just closed. Inside, I sat on the edge of the bed, heart racing, not from fear, but from something sharper, recognition. Because this moment hadn't come out of nowhere. It had been building quietly for years. I reached for my laptop, not to search for apartments, not to call friends. I opened a folder I hadn't touched in a long time. Property records, deeds, transfers, legal documents I had organized years ago when my parents didn't understand what they were signing. When my brother waved it off, saying he was too busy for boring paperwork, I had dealt with it carefully, legally, correctly. My breathing slowed as I scrolled. There it was. Clear, undeniable names, dates, signatures. The calm that washed over me surprised even myself, like the pieces finally locking into place. When I walked back into the dining room, they were still there. My brother was smiling again, confident, just as I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder, placing it gently on the table. What's that? My father asked finally. The records, replied. My brother's smile faltered. I slid one page toward him. I think you should read this, I said evenly. He glanced down, then froze. My mother leaned over. Her face paled. My father stood up so quickly his chair scraped against the floor. That's not possible, my brother said, his voice suddenly tight. I met his eyes. Actually, I said calmly, you all have 24 hours. No one spoke. The air felt charged, like something massive had just been revealed. My brother's expression faded, replaced by disbelief. I realized this dinner wasn't anything, suggesting that the truth they had ignored for years was finally coming to light. No one spoke after I said it. You all have 24 hours. The words didn't need to be loud. They didn't need emphasis. They sat in the air like something solid, pressing down on the table, the plates, the room itself. My brother was the first to react. He laughed sharply, forced, too quick to be genuine. You're bluffing, he said, waving a hand dismissively. You don't have the nerve. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. My mother had already pulled the paper closer, her fingers trembling slightly as she read the top line. I watched her eyes move slowly back and forth, as if rereading it might somehow change what was written. My father leaned over her shoulder. I saw his face shift before he spoke. Not anger, not disbelief. Fear. That's not possible, my mother whispered. This house is ours. It used to be, I said quietly. My brother snatched the document from her hands. This is fake, he snapped. You wouldn't. I didn't do anything, I interrupted calmly. I just didn't undo it. That was when the silence truly settled. Years earlier, when my parents had nearly lost the house, everything had been chaos. Missed payments, confusing paperwork, a mess left behind by an old inheritance agreement no one wanted to touch. They had turned to me then. "You're good with this stuff," my father had said. "Just help us get through it," my mother had added. So I did. I organized documents, corrected filings, paid fees out of my own account to avoid penalties, put my name on paperwork temporarily because someone had to take responsibility. It's just until things are settled, they promised. Things settled, life moved on, and no one ever bothered to change it back because I was useful, because it didn't inconvenience them until now. That night ended without resolution. My brother stormed out first, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. My mother cried quietly at the table, her hands folded in her lap like she was praying for something to undo itself. My father stood by the window for a long time, staring out into the dark yard. I went to my room and closed the door. Not locked, just closed. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what would happen next. The next 24 hours were chaotic. Calls from lawyers, messages from relatives, accusations disguised as concern. My brother tried intimidation first. "You'll destroy this family," he said over the phone. "Everyone will know what you did." Then guilt. "Mom hasn't slept. Her blood pressure is high." Then bargaining. "We can make a deal. Just give us time." I listened. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue because I finally understood something that had taken me years to learn. People only panic when the power dynamic shifts. My parents came to me separately the next morning. My mother first. She looked exhausted, smaller than I remembered, like someone whose certainty had been stripped away overnight. "You wouldn't really do this," she said quietly. "I didn't start this," I replied. "I just stopped pretending." She shook her head. "Families don't act like this." "No," I said gently. "Families don't tell one child they're disposable either." She had no answer. My father came later. He didn't accuse. He sat down heavily across from me, rubbing his hands together as he always did when he was nervous. "You knew," he said. "All this time." "Yes. And you never said anything." "I trusted you," I replied. "I didn't think I'd need to." That was when his shoulders slumped. "We got used to it," he admitted. "You handling things, fixing things. We stopped seeing it as effort." There it was. The truth finally spoken. My brother never apologized. He packed loudly, angrily, like someone who believed noise could erase consequences. He accused me of betrayal, manipulation, cruelty. I didn't respond. He had already said enough over the years. By the end of the week, everything was formalized. My parents stayed temporarily under a written agreement this time. Clear terms, clear boundaries, rent, responsibilities, no assumptions, no entitlement. The house felt different after that. Quieter, honest. Months passed. Slowly, the tension softened into something manageable. Not forgiveness, not closeness, but respect. For the first time, no one spoke over me. No one decided things for me. Epilogue: 1 year later, I sold the house. Not out of revenge, but for closure. I bought something smaller, brighter, entirely mine. A place where every decision reflected my life, not someone else's expectations. My parents moved into a place they chose themselves. My brother moved on too. Still resentful, still loud, but no longer in my space. Family gatherings became optional. Peace became permanent. Here's what I learned: the truth that took years to fully accept. Being reliable does not mean being respected. Being quiet does not mean being weak. When people benefit from your silence, they will resent your voice the moment you use it. I didn't take anything that wasn't already mine. I simply stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. And the moment I did, everything they relied on, the assumptions, the entitlement, the power imbalance, collapsed. Not because I was cruel, but because I was finally honest. And that is where the story truly ends.